So the first mechanic I'm going to discuss is dragon spitting ice. Watch his body for the spit mechanic. When he arches up like that and shoots his head up, that's when ice is going to land. It's important for people going into ice to be watching for that mechanic to happen, to anticipate running out as quickly as possible. Here's another situation I wanted to discuss where there's double ice. So if you see two ice circles next to each other, what you end up doing is blocking and then going between the two, right down the middle. If you go in and you hit the first one first, then you hit the second one, you're going to explode because you get the debuff put on you. So it's very important to take both ice at the same time. This makes the fight go a lot faster if you can grab both. Eventually you'll learn when it's close enough to be double ice versus not. Typically, an experienced healer will try to tell you it's a double, so you know to try to get both. And then also the healer, if you want to help your group, you can tell Ice B that they are free and just say like, B, you're free, and then they can get back to the fight and not stay out there wondering if they need to take ice. Here's another thing that you would want to look out for. Do you see those lightning lines traveling along the ground? They start to collect and they form a white circle. Watch it show up on the ground there. Now look at where I stand and I get stunned. I wasn't watching my feet this pull, and that's when the storm atro drops and spawns. But if it drops and spawns on you, it will stun you, do some damage, and it can be kind of a nuisance during the fight. So that was actually a good example, at least for a tutorial, to show you what that looks like. The first fight phase, you are fine to stay together. You don't have to change your position at this time. So initially what DPS will do is they'll target usually the first storm atro nearest to them, but your group leader will call out where he wants you to start, whether that's exit or entrance. Another thing here is you will notice that someone will get a circle underneath them, a big one. That is the meteor. See it coming in there, impacting. That is something that you will need to block if it is on you, as well as if you are in group with it. Everybody in group needs to block that if they're in the circle, or you will go flying. So keep an eye on your stamina as well. Another thing to watch out for that spawns during the fight are those little pink circles. Those are also stuns that happen. You just want to make sure to block that when that pops up, or simply sidestep it. Another thing to keep an eye out for are the little pixie fire circles that spawn randomly. You definitely don't want to stand in that fire. It will hurt a lot and will usually one-shot people during beam phase, which I'll go over later. Other things you need to look out for, do you see those big conal attacks? Those are the cleave attacks from the ice atros. They will one-shot you usually. So just be mindful of that when moving around, that they aren't going to be facing you. That's also something the tanks usually keep track of, that they're not facing the group and going to hit the group. It's a good idea during the fight to have one person with a symbol above their head that everyone stays with, because that way you're all attacking the same ads. This is beam phase, obviously, where you want to block the beam. It's very important to be in your positions prior to beam hitting, because if any of those AoEs cross each other's bodies, you will kill each other. So it's good to soft stack the way we are here, so you can get all the heals under your group and everybody knows their position and you're not running to your position last minute. Again, if you cross paths with someone, they will die if you get the AoE over them. Another thing I wanted to mention about ice cages is it's really nice for the healer to tell you when to go into ice for Ice B. Typically, the first ice cage person can just run out as soon as they see the dragon spit and drop ice. That's good to go. Ice B, however, it's nice to let the healer tell you when to go in, because that gives them a chance to reproc an ability, perhaps get in a heavy attack to proc their major mending to get you out even faster. So the one thing that you will do as far as your responsibility for Ice B, if your healer does not tell you to go in yet, go ahead and go in if you see the frost circle closing. I'll try to get a good shot of that at some point in this fight so you know what I'm talking about. There is an external white circle that's slowly getting closer and closer to the center. Maybe I'll be able to show you right there. And if it gets all the way to the center, it will go ahead and explode the ice cage and you've gone in too late. So I'll try to also show an arrow here of what I'm talking about. So make sure you get into that circle, even if they don't tell you to go in, if that is about to close, because otherwise you'll blow up. So the biggest difference for the second flight phase at 50% is the dragon will start channeling the beam pretty much immediately. So you don't want to focus on the ads per se. You basically just want to group up, have someone pop barrier, do your vigors, whatever your group is doing, and then get to your positions immediately. You want to make sure you block the beam again, of course, and that you're all soft stacked on top of each other for heals. Other things to look out for again are these pink circles that come up that are stuns. You need to make sure to block those, like the one right there. You also need to make sure if you get the fire circle underneath you from the pixies that you do not stand in those. If there's fire burning underneath your feet, you have to move out of it. Just make sure you don't overlap your AoE circle with someone else. So try to not move too much, but enough that you're not burning. Make sure again to block any of those meteor big circles that are underneath you if those are in group. If the tanks have time to go ahead and taunt the fire pixies, that's also really good, so they're not just beating up everybody as we're running around, especially during beam phase. Make sure you stay together as a group again with the person with the symbol on their head. Usually you move from entrance to exit or exit to entrance, whatever your group has designated. They should call it out. Make sure to keep blocking those AoE circles as they happen. It's just also really important to stay together and not have one person, you know, outside of group, because you will usually take a lot of damage if you're not in heals, especially when things start pulsing like that. Other things to look out for I didn't mention prior is when the lightning drive-by happens. Make sure you're watching where that lightning is staying on the ground, that you're not standing in it, because you will usually die to it if you're in there for more than a few seconds. So that's very important. Something I want to mention here also for people healing ice, it's really important that the person in ice is shielded from the dot. So it's why we typically run Black Rose Prison Staff and the healing ward skill. It's also important why DDs or other people shouldn't try to take any damage when cages are out, because you can steal your healer's shield procs off the person in the cage. And if they aren't shielded, that can, you know, lead to a cage popping. So it's really good to not try to steal those shield procs, because they are a 360 heal and they go to the lowest person in the room. The person who's healing the cage, make sure you're watching the person's health bar. I'll slow it down here so you can see what I mean. If the shield applies to them properly, it will be grayed out and you can tell that the shield is on them successfully. You can also see once more a quick glimpse of when the shield is on K-Bot, who is currently in the cage. All right, so the final flight phase, again, you can group up to attack the ads first. The beam will happen later, unlike 50%. A difference here too is the lightning drive-by like that will be a crisscross formation typically, where there'll be 2 drive-bys. So just make sure to watch for the lightning in the arena. Again, sidestep or block the pink AoE circles. The fire circles that come up, you'll need to get out of. Make sure to watch for the cleave, that you're not going to take damage from that. When things are pulsing, make sure you really group up so your healers can heal you. Make sure to block the beam, soft stack, be in your positions. Block any of the pink circles, again, that come up during beam phase, and don't cross your circle with someone else. Everybody will survive, and it will be a good time. And you go back to killing ads. This was an example of a meteor that was in group where either people didn't have stam or they didn't block, so it did send them flying. Thankfully not off the arena, and they didn't die, which is great. One thing that can happen in groups is if there are 3 fire pixies up, they will channel a large AoE that will kill people. We didn't have that during this run, so just make sure to watch for that if you have 3 pixies up, that you do not stand in that circle. That was another good example of the healer who went into cage 1, taking both ice because she went down the middle and got both. Thank you for watching. Hopefully seeing the mechanics slowed down is useful, just so you know what to look for. Loki's pretty tricky at first, so don't feel bad if it takes a minute to learn the fight.